Hi, everybody. I'm Mike. This is Budget Guns and Gear Reviews, and you are listening to The Right of the People, where we use the first to defend the second every Friday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. So uncover your keyboards and fire up your fingers. Time to join the conversation.
Hey there, everybody out there on the YouTubes and the gun channels and every other place where you may be hearing the sound of my voice. This is The Right of the People. No, it is not Friday. I could not do the show on Friday. It is, in fact, Sunday, May 5th, 2019. Had some personal stuff that I had to attend to on Friday, so couldn't do it. But I didn't want to abandon the show entirely this week, so here we are. Got quite a bit to go. Well, not really quite a bit, but there's stuff that we can talk about all for the entire hour. That's for sure. To go through. Just bear with me if I'm coughing and hacking and whatnot. Please don't get mad if I clear my throat. If you guys have heard about the SHOT Show crud, I think I have the NRA version of that. I've kind of been sick since I got home, so yay. Hope y'all who were there got it too, because one of y'all gave it to me. Anyhow, want to thank everybody for stopping by. Let's start with those on the panel. We got the one that strikes at night. How you doing, Night Strike?
Shall not be infringed.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much par for the course, isn't it?
Yes, but still, you know, I'm feeling it because yesterday was range time, even in harsh thunderstorms. So, yeah.
That's right. Got to let the sound of freedom ring, right? However it goes, right?
Yeah.
No matter what the weather is.
I had several phone calls while recording some, clips here and there too. So, I'm just gonna throw that up into a video and say, have fun, guys.
Excuse me. The one, the only the Kingpin, David Bowling. How you doing, sir?
Doing well. Thanks for having me. Always a good time.
Oh no, we're special now. We got Gunpowder Beauty joining us. How you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for the invite.
Oh, watch out.
No problem. Throat punches for everyone.
Oh, I'm trying to be nice. Yeah, it's a comedic effort, but yeah.
It's all right. Excuse me.
Remember to take 5 steps to the right.
Out there in the chat on the YouTube side, we got Tardot. How you doing, sir? Got Gunpowder Beauty, who's pulling double duty. Kingpin, Gun Snob, Snob's wife, Gun Lover Grandpa Stanley, Walter Miner. Let's see. Gizzard Gary, how you doing, sir? Kingpin, Travis T. The Poor Conservative, how are you? Glad to see everybody there. And John Z, glad to see you. And anybody who's going to stop by and hasn't made it here yet, hello. Welcome to the show. For those of you who are new to the show, which I don't think anybody out there is right just yet, but anyone who happens to be listening to this on replay for the first time, The Right of the People is where we present Second Amendment related news and current events articles and discuss it with both the people on the panel and those of you in the chat. So if you have something to contribute, please feel free. If I'm not on it, the people on the panel usually are, and we'll get your questions answered. Well, okay, if we have the answer. If not, hey, I'll tell you I don't know. Starting off, the big news of the week, of course, has been the debacle that's been ongoing with the National Rifle Association and its ties with Ackerman McQueen and its perceived corruption and mismanagement in the leadership at the leadership level. There were a bunch of shenanigans that went on at the meeting last week, and then during the board meeting on Monday, where they, according to their statement, unanimously elected Wayne Lop as executive vice president again. Of course, what does unanimous mean? I guess is the question. Is it every single one of the 76 board members voted for Wayne LaPierre in a show of unity, or is it nobody run against him, so they didn't even have a vote and it was passed by acclamation and therefore, quote unquote, unanimous? I tend to believe it's the latter. I tend to believe that they were deliberately misleading, i.e., they freaking lied about the unanimity of it, because I cannot believe, based on some things I've heard from people who know people, about the dissatisfaction of some of the members of the board, that every single one voted for Mr. LaPierre. So, I think it's somewhat less than honest of them to say that. That being said, the poor conservatives have Wayne's minions. Yeah, pretty much. The rest of the world, particularly on the anti-gun side, is paying attention to what happens with the NRA, because like it or love it, like it or not, hate the NRA, love the NRA, you think they do a great job, you think they do a terrible job, they are the biggest purported gun rights organization in this country, and possibly even the world, I would imagine. They've been around since 1871. They've been providing training and education and such during that whole time, so I got to give them that. But their efforts on the political front as of late have been less than stellar, and they've all
less than stellar.
And even despite that, throughout the history of it, we have what we have in large part because they have drugged their feet in and done damage control. Whether we like the fact that they haven't gotten any damn thing back and they've just been slowing the losing battle, that's a strategy discussion that I'm not really interested in having right now. But that is a fact as far as I'm concerned. Without them, things are going to be a little bit tougher for us to slow that decay, at least in the short term. There are a lot of people who think that if the NRA goes away, then, to quote a character from Aliens, that's it, man. Game over, man. Game over. Well, there are those that also think that the NRA burning down to ashes is an outstanding opportunity for us to rebuild something that might actually do what we want it to do. I don't know. I tend to be somewhere in between on that. I think, as in with most things, that the truth lies somewhere in between the extremes. But that's neither here nor there. The important thing that I'm trying to get at, and I'm going through Detroit to get to Boston here, is is that the outside world's watching. The enemies of freedom are watching, and they are just drooling at this. This is an article from the Huffington Post, I believe it was, by Sebastian Murdoch. It says the NRA is a crashed car on fire, ready to explode. The National Rifle Association is on fire. We can't look away. The National Rifle Association is facing collapse. Membership is plummeting, investigations are opening, and victims of gun violence are holding the organization accountable for deaths all across the country. All of this came to a head on Saturday during the NRA convention in Indianapolis, where a comedy of errors eventually led to the announcement that the gun group's president, Oliver North, would not seek re-election. Here's how the NRA got to that point. A lack of fear leads to a lack of money. In the immediate aftermath of the 2012 Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting that left 20 children and 6 adults dead, the NRA's then president, Wayne LaPierre, blamed violent video games for the shooting and had the gall to suggest that more guns in school would have stopped the shooter. In the years following, the NRA pushed hard against President Barack Obama's ultimately failed plan to pass meaningful gun legislation. Barack Obama wants to unilaterally strip your gun rights, read a threatening headline from an article by the NRA's legal arm in 2016. Framing Obama as an existential threat to gun rights worked for the NRA. Gun advocates who feared Obama was actively trying to disarm them gave the group enough money to spend more than $400 million to get President Donald Trump elected in 2016, as much as the NRA had spent in every prior election combined going back to 1992, according to the Center for Responsive Politics. But with Trump elected, there wasn't the same manufactured fear for the NRA to exploit. As Vox pointed out, the group became a victim of its own success. In 2017, it reported a loss of $55 million in income as membership plummeted. And Trump has not been an especially intelligent ally for the organization, at times openly defying the once unstoppable lobbying group. The NRA's slowly declining income, along with the steady increase of mass shootings, led gun control groups to outspend the NRA in the 2018 midterm elections, in which Democrats took control of the House. A Sandy Hook conspiracist hidden in the ranks. After the 2018 school shooting in Parkland, Florida, that left 17 people dead, an NRA official emailed a prominent Sandy Hook conspiracy theorist to call the shooting into question, a HuffPost investigation found. NRA officer Mark Richardson emailed Wolfgang Halbig, a notorious harasser of Sandy Hook victims' parents, a day after the Parkland shooting to falsely suggest there was a second shooter. Just like Sandy Hook, there's so much more to this story, Richardson said in an email obtained by HuffPost. 20 children and 6 adults were killed during the 2012 Sandy Hook shooting in Newtown, Connecticut. The Parkland shooter was not alone. He sent the email from his official NRA email address. And while the NRA released a statement calling the conspiracies insane, the group stopped short of saying it would fire Richardson. His work email and phone number are no longer active. Excuse me. A massive report shows financial misdeeds. In a report released by The Trace in conjunction with The New Yorker earlier this month, reporter Mike Speece detailed internal documents and state filings from the NRA that illustrated the depth of the financial chasm it's in. As a complete aside, if you want to read that article, I would highly recommend it. It's a long one. If you don't want to read it and you want to listen to it, not last week's show, but the week before, I read the whole thing in its entirety. It took at least a half hour. It's brutally long, but it's filled with a lot of information that I think everybody who is concerned with this should probably hear. But I digress. Let's see, where was I? Excuse me. Hundreds of millions of dollars were siphoned off to top executives and vendors, according to the report. And public relations firm Ackerman McQueen, which has worked with the NRA since the 1970s, appears to have its hands tight around the group's neck. Tax filings for 2017 revealed that the NRA paid Ackerman McQueen more than $40 million that year. The NRA took steps to cut down on spending in 2018 by doing away with free coffee and water coolers for employees at its Virginia headquarters. That was apparently not enough to stop the bleeding. The group's shady business practices led Mark Owens, former head of the Internal Revenue Service division that oversees tax-exempt enterprises, to tell The Trace that the litany of red flags is just extraordinary, and added that without its tax-exempt status, the NRA would likely not survive. An attempted overthrow backfires. During the NRA's convention on Friday, Trump took the stage to falsely claim that he had stopped a coup against his presidency. I don't think that's false at all. It wasn't true, but foreshadowed an actual overthrow attempt by top NRA officials the following day. In a surreal scene during Saturday's convention, the NRA's first vice president, Richard Childress, timidly read a letter from the group's president, Oliver North, saying North would not seek re-election. I hope to be with you today as NRA president endorsed for re-election. I'm now informed that that will not happen. North, who did not attend the convention on Saturday, wrote in the letter. Following the Trace's report that he was deep in bed with Ackerman McQueen, North had attempted to unseat top NRA executive Wayne LaPierre. LaPierre said he had received a letter from North on Thursday that threatened to go to the board with damaging information on him. The extortion was simple. Resign or there will be destructive allegations made against me and the NRA. LaPierre wrote in a letter to the board. Alarmed and disgusted, I refused the offer. North's plan backfired. The board instead ousted him, not LaPierre. Wayne LaPierre works for the NRA. Marion Hammer, former NRA president, told the Associated Press his loyalty is to the NRA. Oliver North is employed by Ackerman McQueen, a vendor of the NRA, and it is clear that his loyalty is to Ackerman McQueen. Blood in the water. The NRA's recent embarrassments could pale in comparison to what happens next. Following the Traces report, Shannon Watts of the gun safety group Moms Demand Action said its organization, Everytown, has filed a complaint with the IRS over the NRA's tax-exempt status. Everytown is calling on the IRS, Congress, and state charities regulators to investigate the NRA, its officers, and board members to determine if a pattern of financial mismanagement and self-dealing is so pervasive as to jeopardize their tax-exempt charity status, Watts said in a Twitter thread. The New York Attorney General's office said it was also launching an investigation into the group, which could further threaten its tax-exempt status. As part of this investigation, the Attorney General has issued subpoenas, a spokesperson for New York Attorney General Letitia James said in a statement to CNN on Saturday. And for all of the NRA's work putting Trump in office, the president has only mustered a couple of tweets on Monday calling the investigation into the group illegal and unfair. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo didn't seem too concerned by Trump's whining, according to a statement he released Monday. Unlike you, President Trump, New York is not afraid to stand up to the NRA. Yeah. And in another story from, I forget where the hell it's from, but goes on to talk about Wayne LaPierre's shenanigans. Ad firm claims NRA CEO Wayne LaPierre charged them over $240,000 in travel expenses, by Julian Sullivan. National Rifle Association CEO Wayne LaPierre charged the group's ad agency over $240,000 in expenses related to trips he took to Italy, Hungary, the Bahamas, and other locations without providing any documentation, according to a letter from the ad agency obtained by the Wall Street Journal. Sources told newspaper. Oh, by the way, this is a Wall Street Journal article. That reminded me. Sources told the newspaper that LaPierre charged some of the expenses from trips to Budapest, Palm Beach, and Reno on an ad firm Ackerman McQueen's credit cards. The firm was subsequently reimbursed by the group over time. But Ackerman McQueen told NRA's board in the letter that LaPierre failed to provide adequate documentation for all of his expenses. NRA attorney William Brewer told the newspaper that LaPierre's trips were all work-related and the payments were routed through the agency for confidentiality and security purposes. Group director Marion Hammer told the Journal that allegations were part of a failed coup attempt. LaPierre reportedly did not respond to requests for comment. The NRA is in the middle of a lawsuit against Ackerman McQueen, alleging that the firm was unable to provide proper documentation for its bills to the group. In the lawsuit, the NRA also accused its former president, Oliver North, of financial double-dipping and not doing his contracted work for the group. Days after the suit was filed, Ackerman McQueen sent LaPierre a letter claiming his travel expenses charged to the firm came without documentation. North has since left the group, and the New York Attorney General announced that it was probing the NRA for potential financial and disclosure problems. And that right there, folks, is why I think that the NRA's days are numbered. If, excuse me, please, particularly since they refused to prune the tree of all of its dead branches. They refused to get rid of the people at the top who perpetrated all of this garbage and who were complicit in all the financial irregularities that have been perpetrated. Then I think the NRA's days are numbered. I think that the state of New York is going to be able, particularly within the state of New York, is going to be able to find enough excuse to disband them, because as some of you may know, some of you may not know, the NRA is chartered in New York State, and well, as I'm sure pretty much everyone knows, they're not exactly the most gun-friendly place in the world. Night Strike, thoughts?
Oh, where to begin?
At the beginning.
I'm not sure I want to.
Remember PG-13?
Yeah, that's the problem. That's the problem. I'm not sure I can share my thoughts publicly on your show. That's the problem. Well, I'll say this: if their nonprofit status gets revoked because the New York State decides it's gonna make an example out of them, New York State's gonna have a problem because they're singling out gun right groups, to revoke nonprofit status, and well, when the shoe is on the other foot, someone else can do the same to anti-gun groups as well. So, don't screw around. All I'm going to tell New York is don't screw around with nonprofit groups as far as trying to revoke one group's status just because you don't like firearms.
That's an interesting point. It's one that I hadn't
Because
thought of.
it's a two-way street. If a Republican ever gets in charge of New York, or Republicans ever retake control of New York, they can do the same thing to Bloomberg and all of his anti-gun groups.
Why would you warn them about that? Let them just dig their own hole, man.
Well, since you spoke up, what are your thoughts on this gunpowder?
Okay, so for a while I've tried to be very not really pro 2A, but trying to see all of the good that they do, especially when it comes to youth and all of their things that they have been known to do good in. But after NRA and the shenanigans that they have pulled recently, it's really starting to look like maybe it should just stop and be torn down and rebuilt. And it really kind of hurts me to say that, because they do a lot of good things for instructors and the youth programs and stuff like that. But I think with all the other organizations that we have, like GOA and all of those, I think that they will have a better opportunity to do what the NRA was supposed to do in the beginning.
So are you thinking that these other gun organizations will be able to step up to the plate if the NRA doesn't exist anymore?
I'm trying to stay positive about it, and I'm hoping that that's what could happen.
Kingpin, what do you think? Do you think that this is an opportunity for the other groups to step up, or do you think that that's it, man, game over?
I think that the other group should have stepped up a long time ago. I don't really understand why the NRA has got the firm kung fu grip around all the training and the range fees and all that kind of stuff. I think other organizations, if they haven't, I don't know if they have or not, should have already tried to get involved in that. But yeah, it's definitely time for them to spread out what they do.
Do
Not
you
not
think?
get. Go ahead.
Do you think that maybe money has a part to play in that? Because
Yeah, sure.
the NRA, by a huge margin,
Mhm.
out fundraises everybody
Well,
as
yeah,
far as the Second Amendment advocacy groups go.
absolutely. And you mentioned it earlier that uh, they're the first thing when somebody thinks about guns, if that's not like pro 2A, like the gun channels and stuff like that, the first thing they think of is NRA. If somebody's fighting a gun bill, they say it's got to be the NRA. So when bad things happen with guns, the first people they're going to blame is the NRA. So they've got that target on their back, which other organizations don't. And the other organizations can benefit from not having constant scrutiny at all times on every single thing that they say or do. I don't think that the NRA necessarily needs to be torn down and rebuilt, but maybe remodeled. If it ends up being torn down, I think it needs to be torn down from the inside. I think the NRA members could use this to their advantage to stand up and say, look, there's corruption going on. There's things that we don't approve of going on, whether it's the red flag laws or whether it's this Ackerman McQueen stuff, and we're going to force a change. And that would show everybody on the outside that we're not going to stand for the corruption. We're not them. You guys on your side have corrupt politicians and this, that, and leaders and all that kind of stuff, and then you cover up for them. where when it happens on our side, we point them out and we get them out. But I don't know how possible that is.
Well, I agree. I think the best thing would be for the NRA to remodel itself from within. Anytime that an organization has changes imposed upon it, or not even an organization, anytime an individual or anyone has changes forced upon them, they're not likely to stick. It is much more traumatic to the organization and or the individual. You guys ever watch that show Hoarders?
Yeah.
And when the family comes in and they're trying to clean everything up and they're trying to make the house look right, but you still have the person that lives there, no, that's mine, no, you can't throw that away, no, you can't, resisting everything they're doing. That's because that change is being imposed from the outside. But when someone does it from the inside, they decide, okay, I'm tired of living like this, the process tends to go a lot smoother. And I think it's the same thing that applies here. The NRA board, at least at the executive level, has demonstrated that they're going to clutch onto every worthless piece of trash that is in their house, and they're not going to throw it away. Yeah,
Well,
Wayne, I'm talking about you.
they also have to take into consideration what you were mentioning there before when I was mentioning you had asked me about the GOA and the money that they have. If they're, and I'll just make up something, I don't know. So if I'm wrong, I don't mean to be, but if the GOA are experts at legal and experts at being in the courtroom, and then they spread out to training and they spread out to opening ranges, and they're getting out of their lane, how badly will that affect their expertise in the courtroom?
Yeah. I don't know that the GOA is really the courtroom people. I would more go to the Second Amendment Foundation on that one, but we'll talk more about them here in a minute because I do have a plan to lead us there. Out in the chat, Rich White says it's about age. The NRA has been certifying instructors and whatnot for over a century before they ever entered the political arena. The other groups aren't that old. And you're right. I think that has a tremendous part to play in it too. It's not only the finances, that the NRA raises so much money. I think the NRA raises so much money because they're the ones that have been around the longest and they've been at it they have the most experience at it, and it's the name that the public knows the best. You're absolutely right, Rich. The longevity of the NRA plays a huge part in why they're in the position they're in. It's but we're coming to a point where they may find themselves shunted off into the sidelines here real quick because of the legal maneuvering of the anti-gunners taking advantage of the exposure of the antics of the people who currently run the NRA. I don't know if the NRA can survive this. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Again, I don't know. I as I said earlier, I think that anytime change comes from within, that's when it's truly going to last, when it's truly going to do something, truly going to be beneficial. Usually when change is forced from without, bad things happen. So, the NRA had a chance to change from within, and they didn't. Warsaw Patriot says, to be honest, I think we can survive without the NRA. Oh, yeah, I think we will survive, but I think we're going to take some, from the legislative standpoint, we're going to take a huge backslide on this. I don't think we can do anything other than that.
Well, you made the point there that tearing it down, fixing it, whatever terminology you want to use from the inside could be a win. But if you let Nancy Pelosi stand on the top of the rubble that was the NRA, we definitely don't want that.
No, we don't. So I think that it is incumbent on us at this point. You know, I said this in Ghost's chat earlier in the week on Tuesday that we're foolish if we put all of our eggs in one basket. You know, anytime you have one source for anything, if that source dries up, you could no longer get that thing. You know, if you're in business and you only have one supplier for a particular part, if that supplier goes out of business and that part is critical for your business, well, you're boned. I mean, you're done. That they go out, you go out. So us relying solely on the NRA was, and always will be foolish. We should never rely on one source. I have always been a big proponent of supporting all the different gun rights organizations, and you know, I as I'm fond of saying, I put my money where my mouth is. I've joined the NRA, the GOA, the FPC, the Second Amendment Foundation, the several of my local state organizations, right down to my local sportsman's club. So you know, supporting everything at every level is, if you can do so, is probably the best way to do it. But if you can't financially afford to support them all, I would suggest and offer that if you can only do one, the Second Amendment Foundation would be the one to support. Let me preface this by saying that no, they are not paying me. I wish they were, because, you know, hell, that'd be great. But no, they're not. I do this for free. I talk about the Second Amendment Foundation because I believe in their cause. I've said it before and I'll say it again. At the legislative front, this is not where we're going to win this. We're not going to win this in Congress. We're not going to win this making laws. We're going to win this fight in the courts. And the Second Amendment Foundation are the ones fighting this fight in the courts. This past weekend at the NRA meeting, I had an opportunity to talk with Alan Gottlieb again, and I recorded a short interview, which I'm going to share with you guys right now. Nope, wrong screen.
You might want to fix it.
This he meant right now.
Right now. You guys can see that, right? Which is nothing right now, but yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes.
I hope we can hear it.
All right. Well, where the hell's the freaking play button? Friggin' technical difficulties. There we go. All right. Should have been. There we go. You guys hear that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Watchers of my channel or listeners to my live stream will know that I spoke with Mr. Gottlieb last year at the USCCA convention in Louisville. You know, I do a live stream every week called The Right of the People, where we use the first to defend the second. And I'm constantly telling everybody they need to join the Second Amendment Foundation. It is that important. 80% of existing pro-gun case law is a direct result of this man's organization's work. And there's, 39, 40 active cases right now?
39 or 40. I can't even remember. It's 39 or 40.
39 or 40. So what would you say here in 2019 are we facing that's maybe a little different from last year?
Not exactly really different from last year, which is because of the Democrats' control of the House. We're seeing legislation move in Congress that we don't like in the House. But it's not going to get signed by President Trump, so I'm not that concerned about it. But it shut down our national agenda in Congress is stalled. So most of the action we're seeing now is going to be in the courts this year. We've just won 2 key victories recently. Deerfield, Illinois, ban on new firearms and high-capacity magazines struck down in one of our suits, and likewise the ban on gun ownership in public housing in the state of Illinois has been struck down by one of our suits just recently. But what I'm really excited about is we have 2 cases about certain petitions sitting before the U.S. Supreme Court right now. One of them is a case out of California known as Kenya. Kenya deals with California's got a handgun roster and a micro-stamping requirement for new semi-automatic firearms in the state. You can't put new guns onto the list. They get approved if it's sold in California without micro stamping, and older guns are falling off the list because they're either not made anymore, or if the manufacturers change how to pistol grip or something stupid, they now can't comply, and the amount of hangers, number of different kinds of hangers we find in California is constantly shrinking.
Gee, it's almost like they did that on purpose.
Yes, they did do it on purpose. So that's before the U.S. Supreme Court right now. We're hoping to get Kreitzer. We'll hear that case before the Supreme Court. We have a second one for certification for the court, known as Mance out of Texas. It's challenging parts of the State Gun Control Act. It says you can't buy a handgun in the state if you're not a resident of. Now it's the same background check that's in the instant check. And so our argument is that there's no public interest in saying you should be able to buy something anywhere now. The government can't show that. We wanted the trial court. We lost an appeals court in Bonn on a 10-9 vote. And the 10 votes against us were split different ways. It didn't even make any sense together what they wanted. We're hoping the Supreme Court changes that. The importance to us while we brought the case is Vance, the person who lives in Washington, D.C., where you can now own handguns because we won other suits in Washington, D.C., but there's no place to buy a handgun except one licensed dealer works at a police department. There's no inventory. So you have to tell them what you want. You have to order for you and charge you an outrageous fee to be able to get it. And in D.C., it's legal to buy a handgun out of state. In Texas, it's legal to sell it to somebody from out of state. And federal law says you can't have it. So we're arguing it's legal in your residence state, legal where you're buying it. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to. That's before the U.S. Supreme Court as well. We can get that one heard. We're waiting for pins and needles any day they say yes, we're going to hear the case.
So there you have it. This is why it is so critical. I mean, join the other gun rights organizations, but make sure that you join the Second Amendment Foundation as well. It's $150 for a life membership, $15 a year for a yearly membership. It is money well spent. I'm a life member, and I think everybody else should be too. Thank you for your time, sir. Very much appreciated.
Thank you for all you do. Thank you.
And there you have it, folks. Right from the man's mouth. I'll tell you what. People have said about these other organizations would go the same way as the NRA once they get large enough, and I don't think they would. Alan Gottlieb is a man that talks with the president, and he took 5 minutes to talk to me. I can't imagine Wayne LaPierre doing that. So support the Second Amendment Foundation. I think it's that important. What are you guys' thoughts? Any gun rights organization in particular you guys have a thing for? I mean, obviously I'm a fan of the SAF, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm a member of the SAF as well. So I'm there with you. They're one of the groups I support, and I advocate for others to join. But I know people say they haven't had as many wins as the 2AF have, but they have been, participating, and they have been doing things. So I still advocate for the gun owners of America. I know they're not they don't do as much as the 2AF does, but they're still doing something, and that's a hell of a lot more than the NRA is doing right now. So
good point.
Like them, hate them. The GOA is still better than the NRA.
Kingpin, do you have a pick?
Yeah, I'm going to join this year. I'm going to join the Firearms Policy Coalition and Second Amendment Foundation and the GOA.
Gunpowder, I know this is something you've been thinking about as far as alternatives to the NRA and, as far as the training and education component and whatnot goes forward. Do you have anything that you're looking at more heavily than any others?
Well, after this chat, I gotta be honest, I wasn't really familiar with a lot of the other organizations. I'm a little behind the game on that. But Tardot and I have been talking about becoming lifetime members on the ones that we knew of. And so now that this has kind of opened the door to all of the ones that are available, we may end up having to just split it, and he's a lifetime member of a few and I'm a lifetime member of the other ones. But
Yeah.
with what I want to do in the next few years, as far as being an instructor and stuff like that, it is really awesome how many organizations are available.
Yeah. I know as far as the training and education components, while they're not an advocacy group, the USCCA, the U.S. Concealed Carry Association, they're more basically exist to sell their insurance and sell their training division, but they do have a pretty robust training division. That's a good one to go to look at. That's actually next on my list as far as instructor certifications go, would be the USCCA cert. Once I can, pass that damn qualification shoot, but we'll talk about that later.
That's one that I've actually been.
No, let's talk about that now.
Yeah, I night strike that one.
Well, that's okay. Did you end up with stitches after yours?
No, there was no wounding, so I should be all right.
Yeah, I think you're doing a little bit better then.
Hey, I've been practicing that thing, and I hit it 20 out of 29 times out of 10 now. So I have no doubt that when I can finally get back with the instructor, I'll I'll pass the doggone thing. So it was a fluke, man. I tell you, it was a fluke.
Yeah.
There was dust in your eye that day or something. It was dust in your eye. That's what it was.
There was rain. It got rain in my eye. Yeah, that's it. Anyhow.
And I had stitches before I took that course, and I still passed it, gunpowder. So just letting you know.
Okay. Minor details.
Well, we gotta be honest with the people.
Yeah.
That is true.
Well,
honesty is the best policy.
We'll go ahead and start moving into the since we've got that topic out. Although actually there's one more I wanted to talk about. We'll talk about this. Move on to some good news. Because we talked about this NRA thing ad nauseum.
Wait, I thought I heard you wrong. You said you had more bad news, right?
No, good news.
Since when?
Yeah, we have good news. I try to end the show on a positive note. So let's start moving that direction. There's a bill out of Florida. This is from Reuters. Florida teachers can arm themselves under new gun bill by Daniel Trotta. Florida's legislature on Wednesday passed a bill allowing teachers to carry guns in the classroom, expanding a program launched after the deadly high school shooting in Parkland with the aim of preventing another such massacre. Florida's House of Representatives voted 65-47 to pass the bill after hours of debates over 2 days in which the Republican majority thwarted Democratic efforts to amend, stall, or kill the measure. Florida's Senate approved it 22-17 last week. Republican Governor Ron DeSantis is expected to sign the bill into law, enabling school districts wishing to take part in the Voluntary Guardian Program to arm those teachers who passed a 144-hour training course. On February 14, 2018, a former student armed with a semi-automatic rifle opened fire at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, killing 17 people and wounding 17 others. President Donald Trump and the National Rifle Association have argued an armed teacher could provide the best defense against a shooter bent on mass murder. Incidentally, the Parkland Commission came to the same thing, even though it has had some anti-gun folks on the commission to begin with. Like I think Pinellas County Sheriff, it wasn't exactly a pro-gun fellow, but his determination after watching the video and seeing how many times that scumbag paused to reload, noted that during that time, that's when someone who was armed could have taken him out. And so, yeah, they came to that conclusion as well. That's part of what spurred passage of this bill, I think. Let's see. Opponents questioned whether the solution to gun violence should be the presence of even more guns and warned of the danger of a teacher misfiring during a crisis or police mistaking an armed teacher for the assailant. Passage marks a victory for gun rights advocates who were on the defensive a year ago when Parkland students inspired nationwide protests in favor of gun control. You mean after Bloomberg's money backed the Parkland students into nationwide protests? Yeah, so let's be honest here. After the Parkland shooting, Florida lawmakers rushed through legislation that required schools to place at least one armed staff member or law enforcement officer at each campus. The law also imposed a 3-day waiting period for gun purchases and raised the age limit for buying rifles from 18 to 21. Remarkable measures in a gun-friendly state. Yeah, that did absolutely nothing. Although last year's law allowed some school personnel to carry weapons, guns were still banned from the classroom. Backers of arming classroom teachers revived the issue this year, arguing that school shootings often erupt too quickly for law enforcement to respond. In anticipation of passage, school employees in 40 of Florida's 67 counties already enrolled in or plan to take the 144-hour course, a spokesman for the Speaker of the House said. Some counties have resolved not to participate in the Guardian program. Well, if you live in one of those counties, I would suggest that you do everything you can to vote out your existing school board members and get someone in who makes sense. Florida's gun control advocates had made stopping the proposal a top priority. Among them, Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense, which is funded by billionaire and former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg. So not necessarily Florida's gun control advocates, but New York's gun control advocates pushing their agenda in Florida had vowed to stop Florida from doing what Florida wanted to do. So there you go. Some good news in Florida. They, the legislature there apparently actually did make a common sense gun reform legislation, because it seems to me that common sense of having someone there who's trained and available and willing to immediately stop the threat gives you a better chance to survive than having someone there who says, go hide in the corner. What do you guys think? Night Strike? Is this a good move, bad move, indifferent? What?
Good move. Good move, but, allowing to leaving it up to the counties, bad move.
Yeah, I think I have to agree with you on that one. Kingpin.
I think it's a good move. If the people who live in the school district want armed guards in their school, they should be able to have them. And in the same sense, if the district votes down that they don't want guards, then you have the right to move your kid to a different district.
Gunpowder.
I'm going to have to agree with Kingpin there.
Yep, outstanding. Vanessa Kitty points out someone who was armed was feet from the murderer and did nothing. He's now retired, getting more than $8,000 a month. I know, and that sickens me. That's why I added someone who was willing to do something about it. You can have all the armed people you want. If they're not willing to do anything, then nothing. So I guess the whole thing is.
But isn't that kind of the exception to the rule? Maybe you probably know, because you, with the self-defense shoutouts and all that kind of research that you do, how often does the armed person that is responsible run and hide or not do anything? Or is it most likely that they get involved?
I think that we don't know, because a lot of self-defense situations where a gun may be present and may have been displayed but not actually used don't get reported, so that those numbers are, it's hard to pin it down. That's why the statistic is anywhere from 250,000 to 2.5 million times a year, depending upon which study you listen to, that a armed citizen defends themselves or someone else from someone who would do them harm. So it varies. I think that more often than not, good people do good things if they have the ability to do it. Walter Miner out there says, not totally true. In Broward County and Miami-Dade County, they're denying the teachers being able to arm themselves. Yeah, and that's why I said that if you live in those counties, you need to do everything you can to oust the school board members who are preventing your kids from being protected. That's Yeah, Travis T says Brevard elected to hire an outside security company instead of allowing staff to be armed, then found there wasn't enough money to hire them. Exactly. Why on earth would you would you want to do that when you have people there who are willing and able to do it, and it costs far less? It just doesn't make sense. Plus, those teachers have a personal stake in it. That's their kids. I know teachers, and those are my kids. And even I got to admit, even a part of me is like that with my kids where I work. Even though they're all criminal little shits, they're still my kids, and I would do anything I could to help them. So, this is it just seems to me to be asinine to deny someone who wants to help the ability to help. And as far as someone out there mentioned about schools should be fortified, yeah, I think they should as well. It's not real hard to put some entry control measures in place. So, yeah, we don't want our schools to be prisons, but we do want them to be secure, I think. So moving on to my favorite part and roll call's favorite part, we'll go to the self-defense shout-outs. For those of you who are new to the show or who have never stuck around to the end before, self-defense shout-outs are not where I am reveling in the death or dismemberment or injury of the bad guy. It is, in fact, where I'm reveling in the fact that the good guy had the means, method, and opportunity to prevent themselves from being killed or injured by the bad guy. Starting out, I'm sure that a lot of you have heard about this synagogue shooting in California. Suspect opens fire in synagogue. Good guy with gun shoots back. A man opened fire inside a San Diego synagogue Saturday, and a good guy with a gun, this is not yesterday, but a week ago yesterday, and a good guy with a gun chased him out of the building and opened fire on his fleeing vehicle. The LA Times reports that the gunman entered the Shabbat of Poway around 11:20 a.m. He opened fire shortly thereafter. 3 individuals were injured and a 4th was killed. NBC San Diego reports that an off-duty U.S. Border Patrol agent who was in the synagogue at the time of the shooting opened fire on the suspect, missing the man but striking his vehicle. A suspect thought to be the gunman was arrested a short time later. Synagogue member Minu Anvari said, "One message from all of us in our congregation is that we are standing together. We are getting stronger. Never again. You can't break us. We are strong." It is worth noting that, and I didn't have time to go into it here today, but it is worth noting that the usual suspects made the usual noises about the usual gun control schemes after this, knowing that these usual gun control schemes wouldn't have done anything to stop this shooting. Their proposed background checks and waiting periods and yada, yada, yada are already in place in California, and none of them failed to stop Jack. So anytime they start this stuff, remember, folks, they already know it doesn't work. They don't care. That's not why they're doing it. Moving on. From April 26, 2019, by WGN TV, concealed carry holder fatally shoots attempted carjacker after crash in loop, police say. From Chicago, a 41-year-old man with a concealed carry permit fatally shot an attempted carjacker who demanded his keys at gunpoint after a crash in the loop, police said. The shooting happened around 3 a.m. Friday after a man in a Volkswagen rear-ended a BMW at Clark Street and Ida B. Wells Drive. The man driving the BMW said he got out to look at the damage done to his vehicle and then went back inside the car to get his cell phone. The 22-year-old driver of the Volkswagen walked up to the other driver with a gun and pushed him into the BMW. Both men were inside the BMW when the 41-year-old man grabbed his own gun and shot the 22-year-old in the head. The 22-year-old man's identity has not yet been released. The concealed carry holder is being questioned at the area central police station. Well, hopefully they rule that a good shoot and he gets to go on about his life. And last but not least, Old 60 Armory asks, would giving any teachers guns with rubber bullets or shotguns with beanbag rounds be enough to deter an active shooter? I'd say no. I'm not a believer in half measures, but I guess it would be better than absolutely nothing, but certainly not a I don't think it's a good compromise position. Anyhow, last but not least, woman shoots intruder during early morning home invasion. St. Petersburg, Florida, from May 1st, 2019. Police are searching for a second suspect involved in a home invasion in St. Petersburg. A woman who lives at the house on 27th Street North shot one of the suspects. Right now, everybody is okay. Just shake it up, said one of the men living in the home. News Channel 8 is not identifying the tenants who had masked gunmen kick in their front door just before midnight. It's not every day you'd expect somebody to just kick in your door and try to hurt you and take your belongings, the man we spoke with said. He said he and his roommates were taken by surprise. You know me and my roommates, we don't make a terrible amount of money. We don't own a bunch of electronics and jewelry or what have you. Thankfully, one of them had a weapon. She used it to fire at the intruders and struck one as both scattered away. She was collected enough to keep us all from getting hurt, the woman's roommate said. You know, that's really what I'm thankful for, is that not everybody is ready to jump under stress. Police said suspect Randy Stanley Jr. was found with multiple gunshot wounds lying in the street when they arrived. The other gunman is still on the run. Stanley Jr. has a long criminal history dating back to 2011. At least that's one criminal that's going to get prosecuted and taken off the streets. I mean, that's just terrible, said the tenant. Stanley Jr. is under hospital guard at Bayfront Health. He has been charged with home invasion robbery and felon in possession of a firearm. What? How can he do that? It's illegal for a felon to have a firearm. But he hasn't been booked in the jail yet. So there you have it. And while I say that this isn't where I'm reveling in the death or injury of the bad guy, I need to explain one thing, though. I have no sympathy for them. Once you embark down that path, you're responsible for whatever happens to you. You know, play stupid games, win stupid prizes, and you typically get what you deserve. And on that note, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. I'd like to thank everybody for coming by. Those of you on the panel and those of you out there in the chat, I am always amazed and humbled to see that you've decided to spend some of your precious time listening to me. Let me go through the panel and let them have a chance to give some last words or any plugs they have. Gunpowder Beauty, do you have anything for us?
Thank you for the invite, and for everyone out there listening, don't forget to check out Gun Gals tonight at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time.
There you go, folks. Check it out. Kingpin, what do you have for us?
Thanks for having me, man. Always a good conversation. Make sure that you guys go and like, share, and subscribe. Budget Guns and Gear Reviews, and check us out on gunchannels.com.
And last but certainly not least, Night Strike. What do you have for us, sir? Oh, wait, stop. Those of you with headphones, you might want to turn the volume down. Go ahead.
No, I already did that earlier.
Okay.
Yeah, I already did that earlier.
Okay.
Just check out Hit or Miss every Tuesday nights, 9 o'clock, and check out gun2.org. And that's it.
There you go. And on that note, once again, I'd like to thank those of you out there in the chat, and particularly with the NRA's probable demise, we as individuals need to be sure that we are on top of things. People tend to get complacent. Well, we got the NRA to fight for us. Well, we got the GOA to fight for us, or the FPC, or the Second Amendment Foundation, or whatever. But the problem is, the only one that's truly going to fight for you is you. So make sure that your voice is heard. Contact your Congress critters and elected representatives and let them know what you think. Snail mail, email, telephone, telegraph, semaphore, carrier, pigeon, bicycle, messenger, smoke signals, whatever you got to do to let them know how you think, and never, ever, ever give up the fight. I'll see you guys next week.